If you're a Polaroid shooter, you may have heard that SX-70 film is significantly sharper and better than Polaroid 600 film. Because of the lower ISO, most people believe that the SX-70 film is going to give them better results than Polaroid 600. But here at LearnFilm.Photography, we like to take a scientific approach to these kind of things. So we set out to go and test these two films side by side, and the results were pretty surprising. So using a MiNT SLR 670 and a Polaroid SX-70 Sonar, we were able to see the two films in action side by side. So I'm going to break this review down into three parts: color, exposure latitude, and image sharpness. So let's start with color. So Polaroid SX-70 and 600 film both render the image in slightly different ways. I went out at sunset to test the camera to see which one had a more accurate color rendition, and to get the best idea of the latitude of the images, since there's going to be more contrast at a time like sunset and sunrise. To my surprise, the Polaroid SX-70 rendered a cleaner image overall. It was more true to life, and then in the shadows there was no color cast whatsoever. If anything, it was a little bit on the warmer end, where Polaroid 600 was a little bit cooler overall and tended to exhibit blue shadows. Polaroid 600 film was a little bit more neutral, but in reality this difference is small enough that I would never notice it in real life. There's no way that I could look at the images and say that one image is shot on Polaroid 600 film and the other is shot on SX-70. Overall, the colors are fairly similar, although different in minor ways. Typically though, the SX-70 film did produce a cleaner, more inviting image than the Polaroid 600. Now let's move on to exposure latitude. So this is one of the more surprising results, because right out of the box I was expecting the Polaroid SX-70 film would be significantly better, as I think most people would as well, because we're so used to understanding that ISO 100 film is going to have greater exposure latitude than ISO 400 and ISO 1600. So the difference between Polaroid SX-70 is that it's ISO 160, whereas 600 film is ISO 640. Just by default, the camera should have better exposure latitude than the SX-70. But in reality, I found the Polaroid 600 film was able to capture more details in the darker shadows as well as the brighter highlights. Now the difference is not so significant that I would say that you have to rush out and get your camera converted to shoot 600 film. But as a general rule, you can expect to have slightly better performance with 600 film than you can with SX-70. Now, at the same time, it's also not even close to where color negative film is, or black and white negative film. In reality, it still only feels like it's 3 stops of dynamic range, but it still is enough that you can consider that you're going to get better results with the 600 film. And now onto the last difference, image sharpness. So this is another one where I expected there to be a huge difference in the image sharpness, because an ISO 100 film is using smaller grains, so it should have a better resolution overall than Polaroid 600 film, especially on such a large negative, because Polaroid film is actually larger than medium format film is, so you're actually getting a pretty good size image. But in reality, you can't even see the grains on either one of these films, so there's not really a good comparison in terms of sharpness. Overall, I found that the Polaroid 600 film was sharper, but that's mostly because I was able to get a faster shutter speed than I was with the SX-70. In perfect lighting conditions, there might be a minor difference. Under anything that's slightly less than ideal, the Polaroid 600 film is going to get you a sharper image every time. So I had a portrait taken of me, and you could see that there was a lot of visible shake. I also took another image during the evening that was in slightly less than ideal conditions, but still enough that I could get a 1/30th of a second exposure, and the SX-70 film was a little bit less sharp just because it captured a little bit of movement in the image. So you can solve this by putting the Polaroid on a tripod, and that will solve some of your problems. But the Polaroid still has some pretty significant mirror slap that can cause a lack of sharpness in the images. And another factor is when you go to press the button on the camera, you are going to introduce some motion into the image. Now you can solve the second part by getting a Polaroid shutter release, which I'll link down in the description below. But other than that, the Polaroid 600 film is still going to get you a faster shutter speed that is going to allow you to get better images than the SX-70 will. And that even includes during the evening. You can actually go and take a handheld photo with Polaroid 600 film, where you cannot do that with SX-70. If you're doing landscape photography where you're going to be using a tripod anyways, or even going for a long exposure, SX-70 film is going to serve you better because you're going to get longer exposure times. But if you're using this camera for anything else like portraits, or any type of photography that requires you to have some motion or to use the camera handheld, you're going to want to get your camera converted to 600. Because overall, it is just a better film. There's slightly more dynamic range, and you're going to get sharper results. Now the colors are a little bit different, and I do find that I like the SX-70 colors a little bit better than the 600 colors, but that doesn't make as big of a difference in the final image as capturing a sharp image does. So if you're out there considering getting a conversion to 600 film, I would 100% suggest doing that. Another option is to go out there and get a MiNT SLR 670 camera, which will allow you to control the shutter speed and also to use both SX-70 and 600 film, which is incredible. Especially if you're somebody like me who loves having that extra control, the MiNT SLR 670 is absolutely worth purchasing. Alright, so that's all for today. If you liked this video and you want to learn a little bit more or see these example photos up close, you can go to my blog LearnFilm.Photography and check out the article down there on this comparison. I have it linked in the description below, so you can go and check that out at any time. And if you want to learn more about how to take better Polaroid images, I also created a video that tells you my top 5 tips for creating better Polaroid images, which you can see on the screen around here somewhere. Maybe it's over here, I'm not sure at the moment, but we'll see it in post. And if you liked this video, please remember to like and subscribe or leave a comment down below. It really helps out the channel and is helping to show this video to more people. Alright, thanks so much everyone, and we'll catch you in the next one.